Hello, my name is Bob Kenny, and I welcome you to this video, Coaching and Providing Feedback. This is a part of our Building Management Skills for Prevention Professionals video series. And before we move forward, I'd like to ask, please, that you just read through the important information on this slide. Okay, now I've got a question for you. Have you ever wondered whether there's a way to coach one of the team members with whom you work that doesn't come across as so punitive, or that doesn't make people feel like you're telling them what to do? I want to share with you in this video a completely different idea on how to use a solutions-focused, strengths-based coaching model. That's one of my favorite models that I uncovered some years back, put my own touches on it, but it's one that I use quite frequently. Now, this particular model is based on a variety of assumptions. First of all, it assumes that people really do have the capacity, oftentimes, to solve their own problems. Each of us has our own individual strengths and experiences that we bring to every situation. And sometimes part of the challenge is not that I don't know what to do, but I'm not sure how to apply what I do know to this given situation. This particular model also, as I've mentioned, focuses on people's strengths, that people themselves are not a problem, but instead people have problems. And it's applying the strengths that each of us has to the problems that we sometimes run up against that is at the core of this particular approach. It also is seen not only by the coach, but the coachee as a more positive approach. People often report, having been a part of these types of conversations, that they leave with a greater sense of motivation, inspiration, as a result of not what was said, but how it was said and how it was structured. It really focuses on trying to not only help people to feel a greater sense of accountability and responsibility, but also confidence in their ability to be able to move forward and to feel that sense of empowerment that they are equipped to handle the kinds of obstacles that may come up in front of them as they're just trying to do their job. So let's talk about OSCAR. OSCAR is the acronym. It involves 5 steps associated with this strengths-based, solutions-focused model. Now, I want to summarize it here for you, and I'll give you some examples of the kinds of questions or things you can talk about in each one of these 5 steps. But I do want to reinforce the fact that there is a student guide or workbook associated with this video that will give you much more detailed instructions, suggestions, and examples as a follow-up to what I'm sharing with you right now. So, as you can see here, the first step to OSCAR involves outcome. Now, essentially what that means is the coach and their coachee is going to stop and take some time before they get into the how-tos to identify what's the outcome of this coaching session. What is it we both agree should happen by talking with each other? At the end of this discussion, what will have been accomplished? And it's a shared conversation so that both coach and coachee have a defined, mutually agreed upon goal for the session. Now, with that goal in mind, the coach then asks the coachee to rate themselves on a scale, that's the yes, of 0 to 10. So if you came to me, if I were your manager or supervisor, and you came to me and you said, Bob, one of my team members and I are kind of at an impasse. We had a disagreement. We couldn't find a way around a disagreement. It's escalated, and now each of us seems to be avoiding the other and finding excuses to not have to actually sit and discuss things in person. I don't even know how to begin a conversation with this individual to try to overcome this conflict. So you and I decided that the outcome was, as a result of coming to me and talking with me about some possible solutions, that at the end of this conversation, you're going to leave with ideas on how to begin a conversation with your team member. We're not going to solve the conflict, you and I, but you're going to leave with an idea about how to actually get the conversation started with this person. So I would say to you, on a scale of 0 to 10, how confident are you? To what degree do you feel like you would be able to sit down and have this opening conversation with this individual? And you would rate yourself. 0 means I have no idea where to begin. I don't know where to start. 10, I'm sorry, we should not be having this conversation. I already know what the answer is. So sorry to have wasted your time. So you may say, well, I'm kind of at a 4, but then I rate you as well. I mean, I know you. I don't perhaps know you as well as you know you, but I think it's pretty commonly understood that others do see things in each of us that we ourselves don't see. So I may be aware of things about you and your abilities that you might not be so aware of. So I also rate you on that scale of 0 to 10. Now, it's possible there may be a disagreement. You give yourself a 3. I say, I really see you more as a 7. And that will be explored when we get to the know-how stage. So I'm not going to go there just yet, because I'm going to explain to you what I believe you know how to do that you might not be aware of. But there are times when the ratings are pretty close. You know, maybe you and I both agree, or the range is maybe 3 to 4, 3 to 5. Okay, so we know what we want to have happen as a result of this conversation. We have an idea about sort of where the starting line is. If we would like you to be able to leave at a 9 to 10, and right now we agree that you're around a 3 to 4, okay, well, we need to find a way to make up that difference. So let's start talking about know-how. Now, I may initiate because I may say to you, so what are some of the things that you are already doing that might be able to be applied to this specific situation? And then you might say, oh, I don't know. Well, then I would give you an example. Or you might say, well, what do you mean? And I'd say, well, you told me you're at a 3. You didn't say you're at a 0. So you're not someplace between 1, 2, and up to 3. You've got some skills, you've got some strengths, you've got some abilities that you think could be applied in this situation. What's one of the examples that you think could be applied in this situation? So that's the know-how piece. And we may talk about 4, 5, 16 different things that you know that you're good at that could perhaps be applied in this situation. And I may also step in, especially if up front you're not sure what I mean. I could start with a know-how around, well, for instance, coachee, one of the things that I've noticed is that in our staff meetings, of course, we often disagree with each other. And I've always been very impressed with your ability to stop and take the time necessary to really listen to the other person who has an opinion that's opposed to yours. That's the know-how. Again, I may give you some, you may come up with your own. It's probably going to be a combination of both. But I'll tell you, more times than not, people are already people already possess much of the know-how that's necessary to help themselves to work through the situation that you and they are talking about. But there's no reason why, as your manager or supervisor, you can't also express your opinion about what some of those strengths are. Because again, I want this individual to leave this conversation not only with added know-how and action plans, but I also want them to leave with a greater degree of self-confidence and self-awareness, but also self-confidence, so that when they go out and apply what we've talked about, they truly are ready. So this person and I have talked about a variety of know-hows, strengths, skills, abilities. But as we discuss each of those, sometimes there will be an accompanying affirmation. So you might say, well, I guess I'm somebody who's usually not concerned or afraid to speak my mind. So I could say to you, well, indeed, I've noticed that about you, because even though you stop and take time to listen and let the other party talk about not only what they want, but why they want it, when it comes time for you to express yourself and explain why you believe what you believe, you do so in a very clear, in a very concise way. You don't beat around the bush. You don't try to soften any blow, but you also communicate with people with a great deal of respect. And I think part of that respect is shown in your willingness to let people know what you're truly thinking. That's the affirm. The action part would then make me say, if I brought that up, so how could you use that to open up a conversation with this individual to start trying to resolve this conflict? And again, the action item that could come from that could be something like my suggesting, or better yet, my coachee realizing and then telling me, well, maybe I could use that in the way that I invite the person to sit down and talk with me. I don't feel like I want to have a confrontational conversation in the middle of a hallway someplace. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send so-and-so an email. And in the email message, in the body of the email message, I'm going to make it very clear, in that kind of clear, concise, upfront kind of way, what I'd like to talk with them about and why I'd like to talk with them about it. But that listening thing, I think part of the email message needs to also make very clear how important it is to me that I understand why they believe what they believe and why they want what they want. That I feel like something was missed, that we talked past each other instead of to each other or with each other. And this may be an opportunity for us to go back and sort of pick up and see if whatever we missed the first time, we might be able to hit the second time. So this back and forth, the know-how, the strength, the skill, I affirm it, or I ask, or they may affirm it. Come to think of it, I really enjoyed the opportunity that I had to, so they may affirm their own actions, their own know-hows, but then it's always leading to, so how could you use that? And remember, what was the shared desired outcome? To start the conversation with this individual to try to resolve the conflict. Now, at the end, I always like to say, why not go back to the scale and see where you are at this point? But I guess Oscasser doesn't sound as nice as Oscar. So rather than putting another S there between the affirm, action, and review, before this person walks away, I would say, okay, you told me at the beginning you're at a 3. You haven't implemented your plan yet, but we said we wanted you to leave with a plan that would help you to start this conversation. I also explained that I was hoping that you would feel good about it, but you'd feel confident in your ability to implement any action plans. On that same scale of 0 to 10, where are you now? It's a real quick measure of how much progress they and I accomplished within this conversation. And if they say to me, well, I'm probably at a 6 now, that might be good enough, or maybe it could be better. That might lead me to realize, yeah, maybe there's more to do here as a coach. So maybe I might come back at this individual and say, what have we missed? Put yourself in that situation right now and tell me, what are you wishing you and I had talked about? What are you wishing you were prepared for that right now you're not quite there yet? We could then go back to know-hows, affirm in actions, but also recognize that no one's perfect. So if there's something that I need to do to explain or practice with you, or to put on my mentoring hat and explain how I got through a similar situation, I think perhaps something in that experience could be helpful to you here. The strengths-based model doesn't mean give people an opportunity to fix their own problems with what they have right now, hoping that nothing ever happens that's better than it already is. No, sometimes there needs to be new information that's introduced, but oftentimes it can be kind of hung on the outline of strengths or things that this person already knows, that it fits in there nicely like a piece of a jigsaw puzzle. Now, the review happens after the person goes out and implements the plan that they came up with. After they implement the plan, they're coming back to me, and basically we're talking about things like, so how did it go? What worked? What didn't work? What didn't work the way you were hoping it would work? If you could do it again, how would you do it again? What did you learn? Moving forward, how will you approach this? So perhaps in the future, it doesn't have to reach an impasse where you're wondering, how do we move on from here? You can just resolve the conflict in the moment. That's the review piece. Now, Oscar is a wonderful way, in my opinion, not the only way, but a wonderful way to structure what could be a difficult conversation with an individual. It's a wonderful way as a coach to go in with a process so that I don't have to just wing it. I can be flexible within the process, but this can be seen as sort of a template or a structure. So when I have a conversation with an individual, I have a sense of several things that perhaps I might want to help this person to touch on before they leave, so that the coaching experience is indeed what it needed to be. But at some point as a coach, I'm going to need to give somebody feedback. So I want to share this with you. We're going to move on from Oscar. It could be that during the Oscar coaching session, or even during just the review, where we're coming back and the person's explaining what happened, that I give them feedback, or it could just be me using feedback as a coaching tool. I'm one of those strange people that believes that individuals should know how they're doing more than once a year at their yearly performance reviews. I'm one of those people who believes that a really good manager or supervisor is going to walk around and talk with people and maybe catch people at work doing things. How are things going? How is your day? What can I do to be helpful? What kind of support can I throw in your direction? And perhaps even just having a quick one-on-one conversation that starts with some constructive feedback. It's not a full-blown 20 or 30 minute or 60-minute coaching session. It's just a conversation. So when you have to give somebody feedback, I like this model. It appeared in a book by Kim Scott back in 2017, and it's a book that was called Radical Candor. Now, I like this because it helps me to understand that feedback really comes in at least 4 different forms. If you take a look at the 2 axes in this particular graph, you can see that the vertical axis is called having a caring personality. So in other words, it's the degree to which I express how much I care about you as, let me call you my team member, okay, if I'm the supervisor. The horizontal axis is sort of a measure, so to speak, of challenging you directly. It's the degree to which I'm being blunt, I'm telling you like it is, I'm using, again, what Covey called straight talk. If you're familiar with some of the work that Stephen M.R. Covey has done on trust, or some of the work that his dad did in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So challenging directly helps me to just be straightforward, cut to the chase, right to the point. Now, when you combine these 2 variables together, you get these 4 quadrants. So just for fun, let's start with ruinous empathy. And I should tell you, I didn't make up these labels. These come directly from Kim Scott, but I love them. They speak volumes. Now, the ruinous empathy. Now, remember, I'm being empathetic. I'm caring or expressing a great deal of care for you, but I'm not presenting to you a whole lot of challenge. I'm not really sharing with you a whole lot of details or specificity. I might come up to you and say, hey, Kristen, you do great work around here. What does she learn from that? What's the takeaway? Am I just trying to butter her up for something that's I'm going to share with her later? Oh, remember how I said you do great work around here? Well, I should also tell you, oh, the other shoe is dropping. So I guess that's the reason why you could call it ruinous. It really doesn't do anything to help. And in fact, it can erode the respect for or the trust for the feedback that I might be presenting to you. Now look at the one right below it. That's called insincere manipulation. This is where there's no care and there's no challenge. There's next to nothing happening here. This could be somebody who's engaging in passive-aggressive behavior as a way to tell you what's on their mind. Tell in quotation marks, of course, because they're not telling you anything. They're trying to show you. Yeah, I'll get to that as soon as I can, I suppose, because I'm so busy, boss. I just have so many things on my to-do list. I can't be in 2 places at once. Sorry. Not a whole lot of care for my boss's needs or what they expect of me, and not really having a heart-to-heart conversation with them about the fact that there are conflicting priorities all around me and I've got too much on my to-do list or on my plate. It can also be fake praise if I'm trying to butter somebody up. But again, it's not only insincere, but it's very general in nature. There's absolutely nothing you're going to learn from it. Now look at the one next to that, obnoxiously aggressive. This is somebody who really has no filters. This is somebody who, yes, they'll say, I tell it like it is. I shoot from the hip. I'll let somebody know what's on my mind, no matter what it is. The problem is they lack tact, perhaps. They lack diplomacy. And that's why it's not only aggressive, but it's kind of obnoxious. And it might actually turn the receiver off to the feedback rather than getting them wanting to know more, learn more, or even make any changes. So the radical candor part of feedback is where I'm challenging you. I'm telling you directly what you need to hear, but the way that I'm saying it and my intentions behind it come from a very caring place, because I care very much about your success. I care very much about your growth. or whatever the intention is behind sharing this feedback with you. So when it comes to feedback, the question is, what is the purpose? When you're giving somebody feedback, what exactly are you trying to do? Are you trying to help them grow? Are you trying to make them aware of how they come across? Are you trying to teach them something new, and you're giving them feedback on their performance and their ability to grasp a new task or a new way of doing an old task? I believe if you want to give somebody feedback, to make it constructive, to make it fit with radical candor, perhaps to even fit with the Oscar model, I believe it's important to really think about it in terms of how will this feedback benefit the person whom I'm going to share it with? What good could come as a result of it? And then use that as sort of a litmus test to identify the specific way in which you're going to share it. Now, there are lots of different ground rules that I could use in the way that I share feedback with people that would fit exceptionally well into everything that I've shared with you so far in this presentation. Here are some of the ones that people tell me over and over again they themselves find helpful. You're not holding back. You're telling me everything I need to know, but you're doing so in a way that actually helps instead of hurts, that removes obstacles instead of builds new obstacles, that inspires me to want to perhaps grow, change, or at least learn, as opposed to turning me off and making me want to walk in the other direction. Because when it comes to feedback, it's important to realize that not only is it a part of coaching, but coaching itself as a whole involves truly finding a way to unlock someone's potential, to help people to understand that they're not a clean slate, that their know-how, that their skills, that their talents, and even their motivation is something that can significantly and likely is already significantly contributing to their own performance, so that I'm giving them an opportunity to learn rather than just telling them what to do. Kristen, as you think about what you've heard me share so far, I'm wondering if there's anything on your mind that you'd like to ask before we wrap up.
I had just an observation, actually, as you were talking about the strengths-based approach to coaching and the different steps. It really resonated with me that that's what we're already doing in our prevention work in a lot of ways, is working with communities and different groups to use a strengths-based response, find out what the readiness level in a community to take action on something is. So there's a lot of skills that we're already using in our prevention work that we can transfer into the work that you might be doing as a supervisor, using a lot of those same steps that we already use in our work. So I hope this will resonate with people.
And that's exciting to hear, because research will tell you over and over again that you unleash potential in people that exceeds exponentially anything that could come from going to an individual or even to a program and saying, here's what you're doing wrong and what you need to fix. It's a whole different way to think about how you might be able to lift somebody up rather than pull them up. And the results from this kind of approach, I think, are well worth, I'm not going to say well worth the effort, because I got to tell you, I find it easier to focus on people's strengths. You know, so often I'm asked to talk with people about how to get through a difficult conversation. But when you and I are focusing on your strengths, and maybe we're peppering in a little, here are some other things that maybe would help you or add on to what you're already planning to do, probably more than 9 times out of 10, this person is going to walk away feeling better about the interaction and better about what's in front of them. But as a coach, I always feel better about what I may have contributed, even if it was just a very facilitative contribution, where I'm just asking people questions to get them to come up with their own answers.
Definitely.
I'm not going to say good luck, but I'm going to wish you the best in putting your version of this into practice. Give it a try and see what kind of results come of it, and see what it feels like as a result of it. And cut.